the development of youth individualism in homeschools versus public schools, an American controversy. According to the 2019 National Household Education Survey, a mere 2.8% of students in the United States are homeschooled. Of this little amount, 80.3% reported a safety concern, such as negative peer pressure in traditional environments, while 73% reported a dissatisfaction with academic instruction at other schools. These concerns are representative of the broader controversy on whether schools are truly preparing students with the skills they need in the real world. The debate of homeschooling versus public schooling has loomed large for decades, but it almost always boils down to the question of this: which type of schooling not only best educates children, but best prepares them for the real world? However, the answer to this question is tricky. Even though homeschooled children achieve higher academic success in terms of grades and test scores, and develop important individualistic traits like self-reliance and self-dependence, homeschooled students only account for less than 5% of all U.S. students, meaning that the grand majority aren't subject to the same academic success and developmental traits that homeschooled students are. As shown in this graph by National Home Education Research Institute President Brian Ray, while California's public school students score a mediocre 50th percentile in every subject, California's homeschooled students excel in every subject, posting significantly higher scores and demonstrating how public schools don't have the same success. And again, not only does homeschooling translate to higher academic success, but the individualism it fosters is just as or even more important. And while there are critics that argue logically or just without any evidence that the independent social environment of homeschooling causes communication problems or an inability to adapt to the hardcore world, actual evidence and real logic show that the very thing creating these important traits that homeschooled students need is the independent social environment, as it forces them to work on their own and problem solve. And in My Stimulus Connections Through the Tunnel by Doris Lessing and Moral Courage and Intelligent Disobedience by Ted Thomas and Ira Shalev, they show why youth individualism and independent life skills are just so important. Through the Tunnel follows the story of a boy who trains himself to complete a very hard task, not to impress others, but to prove to himself that he has the ability to do it. And this self-dependence really shows how it is necessary for maturity as he grows up and learns how to do things himself. In Moral Courage and Intelligent Disobedience, the authors argue that often in life, making morally right decisions or choices for the greater good may require you to stand alone and face disapproval from peers or other consequences. However, having the ability and will to make the right decisions independently is just so important, which is why it is necessary for every student to learn these in public schools. Some past solutions that have been focused to improve public schools have been the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 and the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, which both have been focused on helping disadvantaged students by improving standards of education and standardized testing scores in the classroom. However, while both having some success, they both never met the sufficiency of homeschooling because they made a key mistake. Not only did they fail to account for developing the necessary self-reliance skills that homeschooling that these children need, but they created an even more rigid and strict curriculum based only on grades and test scores, failing to promote the individuality of students. This brings us into the research question. In what ways can U.S. public schools both foster greater academic success and develop the necessary individualistic skills as evident in homeschools? To find a solution, we must look to what distinguishes homeschooling from public schooling: the independence, both academically and socially. In homeschooling, academic independence applies in the aspect of self-paced courses and individual-based learning, where students can fully grasp what they are taught and problem solve on their own. Socially, homeschooling, independent socially in homeschooling is from things like negative peer influence and allows more individual freedoms for students to express themselves the way they want. So both of these things, academic and social independence, both really demonstrate the positive individuality homeschooling facilitates, unlike public schools. This graph by the American Psychological Association displays that youth and adolescents are exceedingly more likely to engage in risky driving as a group than they would by themselves, putting into perspective the dangers of peer influence and just how much it can affect children and students. So with that being said, what must happen academically to ensure future generations of public schoolers are prepared to leave their mark on the world? First, students must possess some control over their learning. Next, schools must ensure there is a true understanding on the topics they teach, or they must promote academic self-concept. And lastly, grades cannot be subjective or vary based on school or teacher quality and not based on how much work a student puts in, and he may have a lesser grade than someone else because they have a better teacher and they learn the subjects better. In this graph by accomplished education researcher Arnab Kundu, we can see in the blue that over the course of 9 weeks, students actively engaged in their learning performed significantly better than those who started knowledgeable but were disengaged, showing the necessity for student involvement. And to fix the problem socially, peer pressure awareness must be emphasized to start things off. Next, schools must be promoted as a safe space where students can choose their own path. And lastly, diverse opportunities must be introduced equally and everywhere, ensuring students can carve out their own paths. By incorporating these necessities, I've come up with 4 possible solutions: setting higher standards for teacher quality and professional development, incorporating self-paced courses into the curriculum, promoting and developing methods of counseling and student help, and creating diverse opportunities like work-based learning and pathways for students. And however, all these solutions have a key limitations. They only account for the academic or social issue individually and not both of them, which is why the best 2 solutions solve both issues independently and they go perfectly together. Setting higher teacher standards and focusing on the professional development of existing ones will ensure teacher quality, and then implementing these diverse opportunities, which can be guided by these teachers who can will some students to participate and follow a path they want, will create opportunities for students to develop individually and develop how they want to develop. However, there are 2 major limitations: the cost and the student engagement. Essentially, where can we get the funds to raise teacher standards and pay them more, as well as create new opportunities in all these schools? And how can we get all, not some, of the students involved and engaged? But to resolve this, schools can first focus on putting the students in charge. Incentivizing students having some power, as I said before, over these pathways, clubs, and work-based learning will make them want to participate and get involved. And money-wise, education only accounts for 3% of the federal budget. Allocating slightly more teacher salary and professional development is tens of billions of dollars. And education is arguably one of the most important things in our country. The implications of this solution will be increased academic self-concept, or the true understanding, which goes directly along with how students will take control of their studies, as higher quality teachers means the choice for good grades is based on the work they want to put in, not based on how good of a teacher someone has. And lastly, students can choose to carve their own path independently based on their wishes, which all contribute to creating that necessary individualism. So in conclusion, public schools account for just so many students, and unlike what homeschooling has already accomplished, public schooling must find a way to not only educate children, but best prepare them for life, which most importantly comes from establishing individualistic, self-reliant, necessary skills necessary for maturity in the real world. And my question to you is knowledge alone enough to prepare future generations of America with the skills they need in the real world? And this is my work cited.
Are you ready for your oral defense?
Yes.
Okay. Did your research go in a different direction than you originally expected?
So I originally expected my research to encompass, because I wanted to see the differences between homeschooling and public schooling. And originally I believed that public schooling may be superior in some aspects, like maybe the independent social environment of homeschooling might be negative for homeschooling students, and public schooling, how they have more peers, they can collaborate with each other, and they can develop like collaboration and communication skills. And that's what I originally believed. But then I saw that this was like a common notion that everybody, like many civilians have this belief that public school is better for these reasons. But based on like actual studies that I found in my research, it is actually shown that homeschooling's independent social environment it facilitates so much more individualism and creates the need for students to work on their own and take control of their own grades. Unlike public schoolers who can just ask their friends for the answers if they want to for the homework. Public schoolers or homeschoolers actually have to do their work.
Okay. Let's see. What additional questions emerged from your research? Why are these questions important?
Some initial questions that emerged from our research is obviously the main one, which is how can this apply to here? Because I know Cambridge has these work-based learning opportunities, these pathways and these clubs, and they can be run by students. But that is a thing that not everybody has them. I know there's public schools that don't have them. For example, I went to play baseball at North Springs, and one of the parents even asked my mom if they know if Cambridge has a good engineering program, because they didn't have as good of a program, and they wanted to come here because they have a better program. Not all students have the same equal opportunities, which is why it's so necessary for the federal government to allocate more funds towards these opportunities for everybody, not just some, because then it'll be skewed and some people will have better grades, better quality than the other people.
All right, thank you very much.